Good evening. In the Red Scare witch hunt of the 1950s, McCarthy, Senator Joseph McCarthy, was the hunter in what her friends and some of her ex-colleagues are calling the Bush administration's witch hunt against any leaks or leakers it does not view as politically expedient. McCarthy, fired CIA analyst Mary McCarthy, is the hunted. Our fifth story in the countdown. Red used to mean the farthest left. Now it means the farthest right. But a witch hunt is still a witch hunt. And McCarthyism, whether named for proponent or victim, still sends shivers. In a moment, the analysis of one of Mary McCarthy's former employees at the agency, Larry Johnson, on the possibility that we have ourselves a scapegoat. The modern-day McCarthy's categorical denial on Monday that she leaked any classified information, only fueling arguments that something is very wrong with this CIA picture. The White House finally weighing in on the flap today, sort of. Short-timer Scott McClellan confronted with the question of how it is that the CIA was able to get to the bottom of the black sites leak case so quickly when almost 3 years after Valerie Plame's name was leaked, it still has not uncovered who revealed that. I'm guessing here that the outgoing press secretary still has a couple of references to the war on terror left in his playbook.
The leaking of classified information is a very serious matter, and the unauthorized disclosure of classified information can severely harm our national security. We have talked previously about the terror surveillance program and how the unauthorized disclosure of that program has shown the enemy our playbook. We are engaged in a difficult and long war against a bunch of ideological extremists who want to do everything they can to stop the advance of freedom in this world and want to harm innocent Americans and innocent people in the civilized world. And that's why it's important that we not show them our playbook. So the leaking of classified information is a matter that the President takes very seriously.
And we'll show those communist terrorists. Time now to call in Larry Johnson, former CIA officer, former deputy director of the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. Larry, welcome back.
Hi, Keith.
Did the case against Mary McCarthy smell at all fishy to you even before her denial that she was the source of the leak to the Washington Post?
Absolutely. I was one of the first ones out of the box saying that. For several reasons. If you look at Dana Priest's article, there were multiple sources, many who had ties to the Counterterrorism Center that were not identified by name or even very many particulars, but it was clear that wasn't Mary's background. I used to work for Mary back in 1988-89, and she moved on up into the senior ranks of management where she was handling issues at the National Security Council, National Warning Office, other things. So she wouldn't have had any of the operational details that were reflected in Dana Priest's article.
You knew her. Are you sticking up for her because she's a friend, a former colleague with whom you enjoyed working? What?
No, actually, I left the agency because I didn't like her management style, but that had to do with some other issues unrelated to her integrity as an analyst. I've always found that she had a lot of integrity as an analyst, particularly with the testimony of people like Randy Beers and John Helgerson, who I know, when they vouched for Mary as someone who was a worker who could be trusted. That says a lot, because these men are not partisans, even though the tendency in Washington now is anybody that speaks up to defend anyone who says something critical about Bush is suddenly akin to a terrorist sympathizer.
So if she was an ideal candidate to be trusted, what do you think's going on? I mean, do you believe that someone might be framing her? Is she a scapegoat? Or if she had these connections nefariously to Dana Priest, might we better call her a sacrificial lamb?
No, what's going on here, Keith, is this is the White House effort to intimidate the press. Porter Goss has politicized the CIA now, there's no doubt. Several years ago, you had most of the people in the Public Affairs Office, they were intelligence professionals. What you have there today are abundant, with the exception of one individual. Most of the people up there now are political hacks, folks who cut their teeth up on Capitol Hill playing partisan politics. And the last thing we need to have is our intelligence agency politicized. And yet what's going on here is anyone that speaks out critical of the Bush White House, when you have Paul Pillar, for example, who came out and said the White House was wrong in trying to link Saddam Hussein to Osama bin Laden. What did the White House do? They put the word out through their operatives. They try to smear Paul Pillar. Mary McCarthy, I think, is the latest victim of this, and they tried to make an example of her. And one thing I can tell you about Mary, we may have had our disagreements, but she's tough and she has integrity.
The subject of authorized versus unauthorized, this has become the black and white of the 21st century. Whoever the source of the Washington Post report was, is the worst transgression in your eyes leaking the existence of repurposed Soviet-era gulags into CIA prisons in Eastern Europe, or blowing the cover of a covert op like Valerie Plame Wilson?
No intelligence capabilities were destroyed by the leak of the secret prisons. In fact, that came from multiple sources within the intelligence community who were alarmed that the United States was starting to engage in the very practices we used to condemn the Soviets for. Whereas in the case of Valerie Wilson, not only was her cover destroyed, but an undercover company was destroyed. Intelligence assets that were involved with trying to determine, detect, and protect America against weapons of mass destruction, they were destroyed in that leak. That was a case where the Bush White House participated in smearing and attacking innocent Americans. And that's a far different thing, and I think far more heinous, than someone who tries to blow the whistle, or a group of somebodies who blow the whistle on administration practices which take us down the road towards something that looks a lot like what we had when the Soviets were running gulags.
Former CIA officer Larry Johnson, former colleague with Mary McCarthy, not necessarily former friend. Many thanks for your time and your insights, sir.
Thank you, Keith.